No, I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
I really didn't know what to do. Subject-wise, I applied for a whole bunch of things. One, I think, called estate management at Newcastle Poly, as it then
Yeah.
was. I really didn't know what to apply for. I was keen to study. My parents didn't get to university. Didn't get that opportunity. My father started work age 12 or 13.
Yeah.
My mum didn't get the chance to. Well, the Second World War got in the way of her schooling and her education. Neither of my sisters went to university. So I was really fortunate. In those days, applied through UCAS to universities and PCAS to polytechnics, as they then were. I applied for both. As I say, I did a little bit better than I expected. And so I just then thought myself, I didn't really have much advice. Well, what could I do? It gave me a chance to think, actually, and to focus on what it was I wanted to study. And in those days, you got in the post the syllabus, the prospectus with all the different details of the subject. And the prospectus was, I can picture it now, it was a black book, picture of Cambridge on the front. It was sort of squarish, and I absolutely loved it. And I got the bus to various different universities, got the train, paid for it myself, had a day in Oxford. Went to a college there to have a look round, had a day in Cambridge, stayed somewhere, I think, and went to other places too. But for me, it was about the course, actually. I liked the feel of this place. And I then was drawn to it and made the application.
Hello everyone, welcome to Cambridge from the Inside. We're here with a new guest. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, it's great to be here, Sam. My name's James Helm. My title is Executive Director of Communications at the university. And I know Trinity Hall a little bit from way back, and it's fantastic to be with you.
Nice, yeah. James here is really kindly here to be with us as part of one of our alumni podcasts, as I believed you used to study here.
I did.
Nice. And want to go into everything about what your time was like at Trinity Hall, what you've done so far since then, and what you're doing now back in Cambridge. So just a bit about yourself, like what did you study at Cambridge, and what was your time like when you were here?
I studied a subject that was then called Social and Political Science, SPS. It's now called HSPS. It's got an extra letter on the front. I loved it. We'll come back to that. I had a wonderful time here. I look back with the fondest of memories for a whole variety of reasons. And tomorrow night, I'm going out with a bunch of friends. We're going to meet up, and nice. They're all people I met here at Trinity Hall. It was the happiest of times. I met my beloved wife. Nice. We met here. And I made lots of lifelong friends as well. And
what was she studying?
Charlotte studied languages,
nice.
So she was a year ahead of me. My friends in those days, there was a lot of lawyers here. It was a real law college, and so disproportionate amount of my college friends from Trinity Hall days are lawyers. They are now lawyers, various different kinds of lawyer. A lot of lawyers, but a mixture too. And I was the only one in my year in the college who studied SPS. It was the first year. Let me get that right. It was the first year that you could study SPS through the Tripos as a whole degree. And so mine was a sort of pioneering inaugural experience, and I absolutely loved it. I thought hard about what I chose. I took a gap year after my results. I did a little bit better than I was predicted and expected. So I reapplied. Things were a bit different then, but I reapplied.
Yeah.
And I can tell you a bit about how I went about that and why.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, that's still, to this day, something we really encourage students to do if they were to get better results, if they consider reapplying. So were you always thinking about social and political sciences?
No, I didn't know what to do. I really didn't know what to do. Subject-wise, I applied for a whole bunch of things. One, I think, called estate management at Newcastle Poly, as it then was. I really didn't know what to apply for. I was keen to study. My parents didn't get to university. Didn't get that opportunity. My father started work age 12 or 13.
Yeah.
My mum didn't get the chance to. Well, the Second World War got in the way of her schooling and her education. Neither of my sisters went to university, so I was really fortunate. In those days, applied through UCAS to universities and PCAS to polytechnics, as they then were. I applied for both. As I say, I did a little bit better than I expected, and so I just then thought myself, I didn't really have much advice. Well, what could I do? It gave me a chance to think, actually, and to focus on what it was I wanted to study. And in those days, you got in the post the syllabus, the prospectus with all the different details of the subject. And the prospectus was, I can picture it now, it was a black book, picture of Cambridge on the front. It was sort of squarish, and I absolutely loved it. And I got the bus to various different universities, got the train, paid for it myself, had a day in Oxford, went to a college there to have a look round, had a day in Cambridge, stayed somewhere, I think, and went to other places too. But for me, it was about the course, actually. I liked the feel of this place. And I then was drawn to it and made the application.
Nice. Yeah, it's a small world. I'd also done better in my results than I expected, and decided to take a year out and apply. So it's a familiar story. I believe that you're from the Northeast. Was there many of your friends or family members or people in school that are applying to Cambridge or university?
No. I happened by chance, really. I, as I say, finished my exams, then thought, okay, well, I can have a look around. And I decided to have a what's now called a gap year. We called it a year off then. And I did a few things. I worked, I travelled, the classic combination. I earned a bit of money. A few things happened in that year. I did my first journalism because I became a journalist when I left university after a little while. That's been the big chunk of my career has been in journalism of different forms. But I do remember that there was somebody not too far from where I lived who mentioned Trinity Hall. And I think when I was talking about going to visit Cambridge, people said, well, you need to work out which college you want to look at. I looked at the prospectus, but I had no clue whatsoever. And I do remember there was somebody who I think was a final year PhD, or he's a lot older. I can picture him now. Big long hair. We had a chat, and I think his mum said Trinity Hall's a good place. You know, if you're going, go and have a look at that. And it was random. A couple of others in my year, I think, applied to Cambridge. I think one got in, which was useful because his dad gave me a lift in my first term. I think that's about the last I saw of him.
Nice.
He went to another college. But for Trinity Hall, I remember coming down, as I said, on the bus. And because this friend of a friend had mentioned Trinity Hall, I came here. And behind me in this room is the view that I remember and became part of my life. But I remember walking in here and thinking, I like that. You know, I like the scale.
Yeah.
I like the feel of it. I could have walked into another college and thought the same about that. But I came here. I liked it. It felt right. I think there was a tutor for my subject, a director of studies.
Yeah.
Don't think I met him when I came, but then I applied. And because I applied sort of out of, I applied in the usual sort of period, really.
Yeah.
But it felt a bit more relaxed because I had my results. So I wasn't kind of striving to study at that time. I was working and thinking about what I wanted to do and lining up really interesting things for my year off. I went to work in sort of political things and other things too, and had a first go at journalism and wrote for a newspaper.
Nice.
So I had a great time, and it opened my mind. I grew up a bit more. I was old for my year anyway, so I was really old by the time I came here. And then it was Trinity Hall, and that might be slightly more luck than judgment, but I was so glad. I knew straight away I'd made a really, really good choice.
Nice. It's an inspiring story. And what was your time like once you'd got in and spent your time at Cambridge?
Well, I think the thing that I look back on now is how quickly it went. It's not 3 years; it's less than 3 years, and it whizzed by. It's a really rich experience, enriching experience. I made lifelong friends, as I've said. The study I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed it. I didn't take my studies further. Sometimes I think maybe I might have, but I loved it. As I say, I was the first in that course to do SPS as a degree. But I was the only person in my year doing my subject, so I felt a little bit unique in that. I was unique in that sense. But it meant that I went outside of college for my teaching and lectures mainly. Well, certainly for lectures, but also for some of my tuition, and that was good because it meant that I looked outwards too. Because Trinity Hall can be quite a small place and quite a cosy place in many respects, and that's good. But I'm also glad that it gave me the perspective of having to go out and meet other people and have the experiences of other colleges too across the university, and I enjoyed that. So the combination was great. I got involved in the sport.
Nice. I
got involved in the sort of cultural life of the place. I did various things. I really made the most of it. Of course, there's things, you look back, you think, I wish I'd had a go at that or tried that. But I loved the place. I can remember vividly where my rooms were, who I lived next door to. I can remember really the warmth of the place, the sense of community, of having good people around me. I was proud to be here. It was a supportive place. I enjoyed being part of that. So I was really fortunate that my choice that I made, as I said, fairly randomly, that it came off well, and I had a brilliant experience that has, really helped me in life.
Nice. A lot of students, they're worried about, they've heard a lot of myths about Cambridge and they're worried about fitting in. I assume there wasn't a huge amount of numbers from the Northeast in Trinity Hall. I was wondering, how did you find the other students and your time, getting to know people whilst you're studying?
Yeah, I guess I was outgoing. I'd also had the chance to grow up a bit. As I said, I was old for my year, and then I had a gap year. So I'd had an experience of life. I'd lived abroad a bit.
Yeah.
Completely by chance, when I was working in America, I met a woman a girl who was a student here. She introduced me to somebody when I arrived who was in my year, and so I had a bit of a head start in that sense. But so I came here with a really open mind, determined to kind of learn and get on with people, and have new experiences, meet new people. I remember exactly, my first week or two, meeting people with all different backgrounds from all different places. I met some Etonians. I'd never met Etonians before. It wasn't like I hadn't mixed in life, even though I grew up in a small town in the Northeast. But it really opened my mind, and I was really interested in that too. I was really up for that experience, and I enjoyed every second of that. Really, I think I really made the most of it.
Nice. That is inspiring. I do. When I recall my first term, I never really stopped to pause to think about anything like that, and as you said, just got stuck in, which is quite good to hear. With regards to Trinity Hall, would you say, has the college changed at all since you were here as a student?
I was just looking out the window behind me. It doesn't look any different. In fact, it looks even smarter now. The gardeners and the staff do such a brilliant job. The courtyard where I lived on H staircase just through there. There's a new building in there, isn't there? It's the Avery Wong.
Yeah. The music gallery,
gallery, which is amazing.
Yeah.
No, that wasn't there then. It looks remarkably similar. This is an old college. It was one of the earliest, wasn't it? Things have moved around a bit. The library's in a different place.
The library, accommodation before.
No, what's the building now? When you go through past the canteen, through the swing doors, the first building on your right there was the library.
I see. That's the Graham Story Room, which is like a.
So that was the library then.
Right. Okay.
Used to have these great bookcases that you could sort of move to and fro and get trapped in between if you weren't careful. But the library's moved remarkably similar. I don't, I do come in. Unfortunately, I come and see people here. Occasionally, I go into the fellows area for lunch, and I never got to see that bit behind the scenes when I was here. But no, I think it's I still think it's a fabulous. You got. Brilliant master, Mary, who I worked with at the BBC as a journalist, and the college is very fortunate to have her. And I think, you know, physically this place has not changed too much. You know, it's still, maybe it's been spruced up a bit. I don't know. The bar certainly has moved. I mean, that was the kind of fulcrum of the social life. That was the focus much of kind of meeting place and what went on. That used to be up the steep steps through there. Now it's down in the basement, isn't it? And it's called something else. And it doesn't seem as much of a bar. It seems a bit more of a cafe. Students work in there. That would never have happened in back then. But, you know, it's a busy place. There's a good social life. You know, as I say, it's one of the smaller colleges, I think, isn't it? You know, sometimes it was nice to get out and do other things in other places. But, you know, there's enough of a life here to, you know, to be busy and a fantastic group of people.
Nice. So moving on from after your time at Cambridge, you've worked in various communications roles. I was wondering if you can give us a debrief of the different kinds of things you've done and why communications.
Yeah, I became a journalist. I mentioned that I did a little bit of journalism when I was here. I wrote for Varsity.
Nice.
I did summers for newspapers. Had a great time. When I left here, I spent a year on a teaching scheme in South Africa in a township of a really interesting period in South Africa's history. Apartheid was crumbling away, soon to end. It was a period of you know, really profound change in South Africa. There was a Cambridge University scheme to teach. I went with a group of colleagues. One of them was Charlotte, and we later started going out and later still married, had a family together. But we were both teaching at that stage, teaching English. A group of Cambridge graduates, as I say, going out to help in township schools that were short of teachers and staff. I absolutely loved that experience. After that, I became a journalist. First of all in newspapers. I trained in the Northeast, back in the Northeast, in a regional training scheme, and then I joined the BBC as a news trainee and loved that time, and was a correspondent eventually, reporting for television and radio, a variety of subject areas and a variety of settings. I had a very wonderful time there, really. Felt very privileged to be part of that. But I guess, like all journalists, eventually your time comes where you wonder if you always want to be on the road. You probably like to see a bit more of your family. And so when I moved on from journalism, I did a rather obvious and cliched thing that I moved into communications, and I've done a number of roles, both sort of public sector roles and private sector too. And now I work for this university, which brings me back to my place that I studied, to my alma mater. And you know, I on a day like this where the sun is blinding and the you know, Cambridge looks so wonderful, I you know, think what a great place it is to be.
Nice. And what was it about communications that made you want to like stick with that?
Well, I've done it in various forms, I guess. Originally, I loved writing and journalism, and I love news. And as I said before, I came here, I'd written for a national newspaper. I'd written a column. I'd entered competitions, and when I was here, I wrote for Varsity a little bit as well. I used to describe everything from Trinity Hall football matches to kind of big issues of the day, really, and write features about life in Cambridge. And I just love that, you know, the kind of privilege of writing. That was obviously way before social media, but you know, putting your thoughts down on a page and the idea that somebody might actually want to read it was great. And then I, as I said, moved into journalism full time and loved that. You know, felt very privileged again that somebody would employ me to do that and to go to fascinating places and meet really, really interesting people. And I got to meet fascinating people. I had a list of things I wanted to do as a journalist. I don't mean in a formal way, like a bucket list, but I wanted to go to wanted to cover a US election.
Nice.
I did some US politics whilst I was here, and I really, really enjoyed it. I got to do that. I wanted to cover a US presidential primary. I got to do that. I went to New Hampshire in 2000. I wanted to cover a UK general election close-up. I'd done a lot of UK politics whilst here as well, so my studies informed that. And then I also, because I am mad about football, I wanted to go to a football World Cup,
Oh, nice.
and I got to do that as well. So I'd managed to get the lanyard for all of those, the accreditation, and so after that, I'm not saying that I got to do everything I wanted in journalism, but I had a really interesting career, and then I thought it was probably time to change and take a slightly different path, and that's what I did.
Nice. It was really cool. I can definitely relate to feeling the privilege of interviewing very interesting people. So, as you know, the college are running their 675th anniversary campaign, and we're raising funds for a variety of things. One of them is Widening Participation, and I wanted to hear from you, like, given that you're from the Northeast, like, from here moving forwards, what areas do you think we could be doing more in the Northeast for Widening Participation?
So when I graduated, I joined an organisation that was then called Target Schools. I think that was a forerunner to an organisation that still does this sort of work. And I volunteered to go back to schools back in my home area, and I went back to my own school, in my small hometown, and it was absolutely great. I loved it, and I felt it was a real privilege. I did, when I went to a couple of schools, I only did a small number, I sometimes got this slight sense of resistance from teachers, from the staff. I got enthusiasm from inspired and inspiring young people who were interested in the world beyond. And sometimes I felt a little bit of pushback that they might be sent a message that might suggest that they weren't capable of that. They're slightly boxed in their aspirations, I guess. And that made me really interested in opportunity and the idea that everybody could be given opportunities to come to a place like this. I just throughout felt really, privileged to be here. Wanted others to share the experience that I'd had, and that sort of good fortune, really. So 675th anniversary. Wow, how many institutions have a 675th anniversary? Can you imagine it? Just in and of itself, it's an extraordinary thing, isn't it? That this is such an ancient place, but with such a kind of modern meaning and offering opportunities to, young people from around the country, from a range of backgrounds, and around the world as well. And I just think it's wonderful when I wander around Trinity Hall now, and when I wander around Cambridge. The sheer diversity of the people involved, the stories that they relate. I'm a fellow of another college now, and when I, hear the stories of students who've come to this place, to Cambridge, and to Trinity Hall, of course, I find it really inspiring. And I wish them well as well. It takes me back to when I came here, and it was slightly unexpected, but it was such a rich experience. And I really hope that others can get it. And I hope that this anniversary and the appeal and the fundraising around it can lead to that, and to some people who might not think that they're capable of coming here, or even who might not really fancy it, for some of the stereotypes, or for a sense that they might not fit in, or a sense that they might be an imposter somehow. I hope that actually they can see it for what it is. It's a wonderful opportunity, and that this place will be open to them as well, and will give them the opportunity to come here and have that experience that I really, really enjoyed in a slightly different context a few decades later.
Nice, yeah, exactly. That is really inspiring. And lastly, for upcoming graduates and current undergraduates who want to get into journalism and communications, was wondering if you had any advice for them.
Yeah, I get asked a fair bit, Simon. It's really tough, because I think it is much tougher now. It's much more competitive now. There are, massive changes to the world of journalism. Social media exists. People have their own platforms. Journalism has changed such a lot. We went to debate impartiality and media coverage, I guess, but getting into it in the first place, getting a little toehold is really hard. It's really, really hard. So I think my advice is always that you have to work hard and demonstrate that you're committed and interested and talented, but also mainly that you're committed that you mean it, that you're not just kind of wafting around, you fancy doing a bit of that because you once read this or you heard somebody and you quite like the idea that, it's hard work getting in, and you've got to demonstrate that you will work hard, as I keep saying, but that is important. My first job on an evening newspaper in Newcastle, I used to get the mickey taken because I'd come to this university. People used to kind of, laugh at me a bit, and you wrote that and you got that education, and so resilience is important. If you're a journalist, you might be exposed to things that are tough. Open-mindedness, being open to different views, not being closed in your approach, being able to listen to all sides. I'm still, an enormous advocate of public service broadcasting. It's slightly threatened at the moment because of changes in the world, but I think that public service broadcasting has never been more important, probably never more under threat either. Maybe that's one for another time. So I think if you put all those things together and you're really persistent, if you get a degree here, of course, Cambridge is remains recognised, but you'd probably be choosing something, journalism, which is well, arguably, pretty egalitarian in some respects. I mean, some would argue that Oxbridge still gets still helps a bit. I'm not sure in some places, but really, really important is showing commitment, building up your file, if you like, in old-fashioned terms, your sort of cuttings. Things the things that you've written, the things that you've produced, things that you've put together, and being able to demonstrate that you have talent, but also that you are committed, and then not taking no for an answer, because getting your foot in the door is really hard. I don't think it's. Of course, people will say there are examples of where it's who but I'm not sure it is so much now. Talent, persistence, all those things that I've repeated several times, come into play. And then probably a bit of luck, actually, that the right thing comes up at the right time. And being open to being quite lowly, to being the runner, to making the tea, to doing whatever the equivalent is in that old-fashioned sense, going in on a Saturday, doing the sports results, being willing to do the shift that involves the theatre review late on a, when nobody else fancies it. Might not be much glamour at the outset. To a degree, I don't know, but I know that there are some brilliant young people, because I've been and given a few talks at City University and elsewhere, and I wish them well. The world needs good, honest people with integrity to become journalists. Some of them put themselves in harm's way for our sakes, really, to tell the truth. And I am full of admiration for that, and so we need to encourage good people to do that.
Nice, that was really inspiring. So, I mean, when I was researching this before, I mean, you've had a very successful career, and I was just wondering, with regards to inspire upcoming journalists, did you always know that you'd always be as successful as you are, or as you're going through the process, what inspired you to kind of go for the opportunities that you went for, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I've been successful necessarily. I've done interesting things. Some of my lawyer mates who I've mentioned, they would definitely have made more money. I had a big choice when I left here. Did I go into law as well? I decided to go into journalism, and I can remember to this day the comparative salaries. So I've always done things that are interesting, and I loved journalism, as I say, and the experiences that gave me. And I remember a very famous journalist on the first day said that we are very privileged to have a front row seat in history, and I got to see lots of really interesting things in lots of really interesting places too. I think this place, Trinity Hall, helped equip me with that. It helped make me open to different ideas, to people from a whole range of different backgrounds. I went through really interesting things whilst I was here, and difficult things too. I lost my father when I was a student here at Trinity Hall, and the place was caring, and I appreciated that as well. So I try to give a little bit back to this place as well. It's got a real fond place you can probably tell in my heart, with great memories, and to come back in different contexts now, a few years later, is a real privilege too. So I, was fortunate to come here. I do think sometimes luck plays a part. I don't think I planned things an awful lot. I knew very clearly, probably coming here, but definitely leaving here, that I wanted to be a journalist. I was lucky, as I said, compared to some students now, that I could make a living in that. As I say, I think it's probably a bit harder, a bit more competitive now. So to get to do things that you really enjoy and explore some of those things is great, isn't it? That's that's all that most people could want. Some don't always get that, and a lot of it, I trace back to what I learned here.
Nice. So, what you were saying before about sometimes you would have to do the things that aren't as glamorous. Would you say graduates should be quite persistent and trust that a breakthrough will come through if they were to keep working hard?
Yeah, look, I have 3 sons, and I see what young people go through in trying to decide their futures and make decisions about jobs. And when we spoke, you told me that you did a degree in something pretty different, actually, and you ended up in this and doing that really well. So congratulations to you. I'm always a little bit skeptical when people, some people make plans, don't they? And they have a plan. They might even pin it on the fridge at home. Or I'm not really like that. Maybe not as well organised. I do admire people who are like that. I think it's really competitive for young people. The world is tougher. It's more competitive. I always thought when I came out of here, I was competing with people from around this country for a job, the job of my dreams. I think now you compete with people around the world for jobs, and that's really hard. And the idea of rejection is tough. And for some coming out of here, having worked really, really hard in that intense Cambridge period, in that intense Cambridge way, it's not that the world owes you a living. It doesn't. But you probably hope that there'll be some reward for all that hard work. And when you get 40, 50 rejections, and sometimes you don't even get past the first phase, and some AI sift doesn't let you through to the next stage, so you never actually see a person, and you still spat out and you get a rejection. That's pretty difficult. And I've seen some young people who've gone through that, and that's tough. And as I say, very few people in my experience would think that the world owes you a living, but surely after all that work, there's something good waiting at the end of it, and to not find that is really tough. And requires resilience, and requires support and love from people around you as well, and reassurance that you should keep on trying. So I think that determination, that overused word resilience, but certainly being determined not to be knocked back, having a bit of the rubber ball about you, that you bounce back and you keep on doing it, knowing that sometimes it's really not you, it's the algorithm, or it's just the sheer weight of numbers applying for a certain thing. I do think, though, that in my limited experience of this, building what used to be called work experience, the kind of formal internships are great, but they're so competitive. They can be as competitive as jobs, more so. I do think the old-fashioned way I took, I guess, if it's available, building up work experience might not be paid, might not be the job of your dreams, might involve, doing things that you might not be doing for long, you might not want to do for long. But I do think building up that experience, because then, especially as a journalist, being able to say, look, well, I this is what I really want to do. This is my heart's desire. I can tell you why, because, I spent the last, 6 months doing every weekend in the local BBC radio newsroom, making the cups of tea and running errands. I'm sure that's an old-fashioned example of what I mean, really. I did that, work experience in my local BBC radio station, and I was pretty junior. But even a few months there, I'd kind of be given jobs, and that really stood me in good stead and gave me something to be able to talk about. Now, whether that translates to other areas and fields, I don't know. But that willingness, that flexibility, that can-do attitude, I think those approaches are important. Not saying I had those, but those traits, those personal traits, I think are really important.
Nice. No, I completely agree. There's a similar way how I got this job, primarily through my work experience, and after a lot of rejections for sure, but it worked out.
Good on you.
Thanks, James. Really good podcast. Really interesting to hear what you had to say. And thanks for the viewers for watching, whether it's on YouTube or your podcasting platform. We're hoping to get more alumni on the podcast to share their stories. So yeah, we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
You're very easy to talk to.
That's great to hear. Doesn't mean much from anyone else.